There is a resident in your psyche you meet each day without noticing. It is not a melodramatic villain, but a pragmatic economy of old survival moves that has taken up tenancy in the house of your will. You make plans, you set intentions, and then, as if pulled by an invisible cord, you do the opposite. This contradiction is not moral failure. It is evidence of a split. A part of you organized long ago to keep you safe now reroutes you away from growth. This hidden stranger acts through habits, not arguments. At the precise moment when you might speak your truth or move toward a new life, it murmurs, "Too tired, not enough time, wait until conditions are perfect," and you obey because obedience used to be rewarded. The stranger learned which gestures gain affection, which silences prevent conflict, and which compromises preserve status. Those patterns welded into instinct protect a younger self, but they also fossilize possibility. Recognition is the first radical act. When you look at your behavior like a weather pattern rather than a moral verdict, you create distance. You can say, "That is the stranger talking," and in that naming there is room. Naming is not blame, it is diagnosis. With diagnosis comes strategy. Now you meet the tenant with negotiation rather than war. You do not evict the part. Eviction is violence and rarely endures. You offer it a new contract. Promise safety in disciplined ways. Provide rituals that answer its ancient needs without sabotaging your present aims. Practical tactics are simple and disciplined. Train attention to catch the instant of defection. When hesitation appears, pause and map the sensation. Where does it live in the body? What image arrives? Then ask the stranger what it fears will happen if you succeed. Its answers will surprise you. Fear of loneliness, worry about exposure, dread of being abandoned. Those fears are human and negotiable. Counter-proposal. A staged plan of success that includes support, boundaries, and rights of return so new risks have anchors. Behavioral contracts help. Make small, repeatable promises to yourself and keep them publicly when possible. Accountability converts inner mutiny into a system of reliable practice. Rituals. Brief daily acts that reorient attention, short-circuit reflexive retreat. Over time, these practices reassign power. The stranger no longer needs clandestine sabotage because its needs are acknowledged and responsibly met. Transformation is incremental. You will not become unambiguous overnight, but you can become coherent. Coherence is the architecture of destiny. When inner residents align, your actions follow, and the life you intended begins to arrive. The hidden stranger does not disappear. It is invited to serve. Once renegotiated, what once sabotaged becomes a steward. Stand guard, cultivate rituals, and treat that tenant with firm compassion. Daily, through small decisions, reclaim authorship of your life. Begin now. Every night, when the noise of the world quiets down and you finally close your eyes, something remarkable happens. You enter into a theater where you are both the audience and the director, the actor and the scriptwriter. That theater is your dream world. And while most people dismiss it as random noise, fragments of memory, stress, or just meaningless flashes, your dreams are far from meaningless. They are coded messages from the deepest part of you, a secret language your unconscious uses to communicate what your waking mind refuses to acknowledge. Dreams are not distractions. They are signals. They are mirrors, and if you can learn to read them, you will discover truths about yourself that could transform your choices, your relationships, even your destiny. Think about it. The unconscious doesn't argue with you the way your conscious mind does. It doesn't write in neat sentences or logical debates. It speaks in symbols and metaphors and images that bypass reason and strike directly at your emotions. A locked door might represent an opportunity you don't feel ready to open. Falling could symbolize the fear of losing control. Being chased might reveal the parts of yourself you've been running from. But here's the problem. Most people never bother to translate the code. They wake up, shake off the dream, and rush into their day, never realizing that their inner world just gave them a map, a warning, a direction, or a truth they need to face. And because they don't listen, their unconscious ends up directing their lives by accident. Picture it like this. Your unconscious is the captain of a ship, but you, your waking mind, are asleep at the wheel. The ship is still moving, the waves are still carrying it, but it's not going where you intended. Instead, it's drifting toward the hidden fears, the unresolved wounds, the patterns you refuse to confront. That's why so many people find themselves repeating the same mistakes, entering the same toxic relationships, falling into the same traps. They're being guided. by a code they never learned to read. But when you begin to pay attention, when you start treating your dreams and symbols as messages, instead of noise, you take the wheel back. You start decoding the grammar of your inner world. And once you understand it, you are no longer controlled by it. Here's what that looks like in practice. Instead of shrugging off a recurring dream, you sit with it. You write it down. You ask yourself, what is this symbol pointing me toward? What emotion is it trying to surface? You let the image work on you, not as literal truth, but as metaphorical guidance. Suddenly, the nightmare isn't just fear. It's your hidden anxiety about staying small. The dream about flying isn't random. It's your desire to rise above the limitations that have kept you grounded. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The unconscious stops being a saboteur and becomes an ally. The same force that once rerouted you in the shadows now equips you with clarity. Dreams are not accidents. They are instructions. They are reminders. They are the secret mirror of your life, showing you not just who you are, but who you could be, if only you would listen. So don't ignore the code. Don't walk past the symbols as though they were meaningless graffiti on the walls of your mind. They are the language of your soul, waiting for you to translate them. Because once you do, you stop being driven by accident and start living with intention. Every one of us carries a shadow. It is not some external darkness lurking in alleyways. It is the part of you that you exile, deny, or refuse to look at. The anger you bury, the shame you pretend never existed, the jealousy, the doubt, the desire for power, the cravings you've been taught to repress, you push them down because the world told you they were unacceptable. But here's the paradox. The more you exile these parts of yourself, the more power they drain from you. Think of your energy as a vast river. Every time you repress a feeling, you build a dam. You force the river underground, but it doesn't disappear. It keeps pressing, twisting, finding cracks. And instead of fueling your life, it leaks out in ways you don't control. Explosive outbursts, self-sabotage, anxiety that has no clear source. You think you're holding it together, but in reality, you're being drained by the very energy you refuse to face. But what if I told you that this repressed energy is not poison? It is power. That your shadow, instead of being an enemy, is actually your greatest reservoir of courage, creativity, and authenticity? The things you hide from yourself hold the raw materials of your transformation. Fear, for example, is not just an obstacle. It is fuel. The same energy that makes your chest tighten before a big decision can be rechanneled into clarity, into boldness, into the courage to finally act. Anger, when denied, corrodes the soul. But when integrated, it becomes strength, boundaries, the refusal to settle for less than you deserve. Even shame, that heavy cloak you've carried for years, contains within it the possibility of radical honesty, the kind of honesty that frees you and inspires others. History is filled with people who learned to turn their shadow into power, artists who transmuted their pain into timeless works, leaders who transformed their fear of failure into relentless drive, survivors who turned their wounds into wisdom. They didn't do it by pretending their darkness didn't exist. They did it by facing it, integrating it, and letting its energy flow into new forms. You cannot become whole by amputating parts of yourself. You become whole by embracing them, by saying, yes, this too is me. Because the truth is, the shadow is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to get your attention. It is knocking on the door of your consciousness saying, take me in and I will give you my strength. So here is the challenge. Instead of running from your shadow, sit with it. Instead of repressing your fear, listen to what it's telling you. Instead of hiding your pain, use it as clay to mold something beautiful. The energy you thought was toxic becomes your greatest asset once it is reclaimed. Everything you exile drains you. Everything you integrate empowers you. That is the shadow's currency. It will cost you comfort to embrace it, but in return it will give you a kind of power that no external source can provide. The power of wholeness, courage, artistry, and radical honesty. We spend so much of our lives running from pain. We label it as weakness, as failure, as something to medicate, numb, or escape. But what if pain is not your enemy? What if the ache you carry, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the failure, the loss is not a problem to erase, but the very gateway to your wholeness? Your wound is not random. It is not senseless punishment. It is the scar that points you toward your deepest meaning. The ache you feel is not just a reminder of what broke. It is a compass showing you where your life is meant to unfold. Think about it. Every great transformation in history has been born from a wound. The artist who bleeds into their canvas, the leader who rises because they once fell, the healer who learned compassion not from theory, but from the sting of their own suffering. The wound humbles you, yes, but it also directs you. It is both teacher and map. When you deny your wound, when you run from it, you scatter your strength. You end up chasing distractions, status, possessions, addictions, all in an attempt to cover the ache. But when you stop running and turn toward it, the wound transforms. The very pain you thought was your greatest liability becomes the portal to your unique power. This is the paradox. The wound doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to make you whole. It breaks you open so the parts of yourself you've hidden can finally come into the light. It burns away illusions so that only what is real can remain. The ache you feel is not evidence of your weakness. It is evidence that life is inviting you to grow. Ask yourself this. Where has your deepest pain shaped your deepest values? Was it betrayal that taught you the importance of loyalty? Was it loss that taught you the sacredness of love? Was it failure that gave you the fire to keep rising stronger? Every wound carries a lesson coded into it. Every ache is pointing you toward the life you were meant to live. This is why numbing never works. You can bury the pain, drown it in distractions, but it won't go away. It will keep resurfacing until you listen. The wound doesn't stop knocking until you open the door, and the moment you do, you discover that what you feared most has been the source of your greatest wisdom all along. So instead of cursing your ache, embrace it. Instead of asking, why me? Ask, what is this wound trying to reveal about who I am meant to become? The wound that humbles you is the same one that points you toward integrity. It is shaping you, refining you, carving out the depth that will make your life meaningful. Pain is not the end of the story. It is the raw beginning of transformation. Your wound is not the place you were broken. It is the place you are being built. And if you have the courage to embrace it, that ache will lead you to a wholeness far greater than anything comfort could ever give. Have you ever thought of someone you hadn't seen in years, only for them to call you that same afternoon? Or stumbled upon a book that spoke directly to a question you'd been wrestling with in silence? These moments feel so precise, so personal, that to call them random feels almost dishonest. These are not accidents. They are synchronicities, the universe's quiet appointments, arranged at just the right moment to confirm that you are aligned with a deeper current of life. Most of us live under the illusion that life is chaotic, stitched together by chance. But if you look closer, if you pay attention, you'll notice a subtle order, a hidden choreography guiding you. Synchronicities are like whispers from that order. They are the gentle taps on the shoulder reminding you, yes, you're on track. Yes, keep going. But here's the key. Synchronicity isn't about control. You cannot force it, schedule it, or demand it. It doesn't come when you are frantically grasping at outcomes. It comes when you are in resonance, when your inner world and outer actions are aligned. The universe doesn't waste time affirming noise. It affirms coherence. That's why synchronicities feel so magnetic. They show up when you are walking in step with your deeper path, even if you didn't consciously realize it. Think of synchronicity like a trail of breadcrumbs. Each one is small, almost dismissible, but if you're awake enough to notice them, they form a pattern that leads you exactly where you need to be. Ignore them and life feels random, disconnected. Notice them and you realize that life has been speaking to you all along. Here's what often blocks people: the belief that they must make everything happen through sheer willpower. They push, they force, they obsess over outcomes, and in that frantic energy, they miss the subtle signs pointing them toward ease, toward flow. Synchronicity is the opposite of force. It is confirmation that when you stop fighting the current carries you. For example, think about a time you were wrestling with a decision and suddenly, in the middle of doubt, a coincidence nudged you toward clarity. Maybe the right person appeared. Maybe a line from a movie struck you like it was written just for you. Maybe a door opened you didn't even know existed. That is not random, it is alignment. It is your inner frequency meeting the world's timing in perfect harmony. The question is, are you awake enough to notice? Or are you so buried in distraction, so blinded by your need for control that you miss the signals lighting your path? Start treating synchronicity as a conversation. Instead of brushing it off, pause and ask, what is this showing me? What direction is this pointing toward? When you do, you move from being a passive recipient of chance to an active participant in the dialogue between you and the universe. Synchronicity is proof that you are not wandering aimlessly. Life is not random chaos. There is an intelligence woven through every detail, waiting for you to pay attention. And once you do, you realize that the signs are everywhere, confirming, guiding, affirming, that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Inside you exists not a single voice, but a chorus. The mistake most people make is thinking the loudest voice is the truest one. Panic speaks loudly, fear speaks urgently, habit speaks repetitively, and the crowd's voice echoing in your mind speaks with the weight of everyone else is doing it. But beneath that surface noise, there is an inner council, figures, symbols, and archetypes that hold forgotten wisdom. The practice of active imagination is the art of bringing those voices to the table and listening consciously, instead of being driven unconsciously. Think of your mind as a house with many rooms. Most people only ever live in the lobby, where the noise of fear and doubt endlessly loops. But down the hall, behind quiet doors, sit advisors you have exiled. The courageous child who once dreamed without limits, the warrior who can stand firm against resistance, the artist who longs to create, the sage who knows patience. Active imagination is the key that unlocks those rooms. When you invite those parts of yourself to speak, you stop outsourcing your decisions to panic, impulse, or the weight of other people's expectations. This is not make-believe. It is disciplined dialogue. You might sit with a journal and write a question to the part of you that resists change. Why are you holding me back? Then instead of answering from your rational mind, you let the resistant voice respond. At first it feels strange, like play acting, but soon you realize it carries intelligence you were blind to. Perhaps it reveals, I fear change because I was hurt when we tried before. Suddenly, resistance isn't an enemy. It's a wounded guardian trying to protect you. Now you can integrate it, not fight it. The inner counsel may come in dreamlike images, a stern teacher, a playful child, a fierce animal, or even a stranger you don't recognize. Each carries a fragment of your power. By engaging them, you take back authority over your choices. Instead of collapsing under indecision, you become the chairperson of your own psyche, listening, weighing, and deciding from the whole, not just the panicked fragment. Imagine walking into a boardroom where every advisor has a seat. One whispers courage, another warns of caution, another demands creativity, another urges rest. If you ignore them, they sabotage you from the shadows. But if you invite them to speak openly, you can choose with clarity. This is the promise of active imagination, turning inner chaos into inner dialogue, and dialogue into alignment. Because when you no longer outsource your decisions to fear, habit, or the crowd, you step into your true authority. You stop living reactively. You stop waiting for someone outside you to grant permission. You become the leader of your inner world, and the outer world begins to follow suit. Inside every person is a battlefield of opposites. The achiever and the procrastinator, the confident self and the insecure self, the lover and the fighter. For most, this war never ends. They spend their lives trying to exile one half and cling to the other. They want to keep the light but bury the shadow. They celebrate their strength but silence their vulnerability. And yet true wholeness does not come from elimination. It comes from marriage, the sacred union of opposites inside you. Think about it. Strength without softness becomes cruelty. Vulnerability without strength becomes helplessness. Discipline without freedom becomes rigidity. Freedom without discipline becomes chaos. Each side by itself is incomplete. But when these pairs are reconciled, they generate harmony. Like night and day, masculine and feminine inhale and exhale, life depends on their balance. The same law applies to the inner world. When you integrate what you once despised in yourself, you discover an equilibrium that transforms not only your inner landscape, but also your outer reality. This marriage within is not comfortable. To embrace your opposite is to confront what you've rejected. If you see yourself as disciplined, meeting your lazy side feels like betrayal. If you pride yourself on kindness, admitting your anger feels dangerous. Yet that very discomfort is proof you're at the doorway of wholeness. Integration asks for courage, not the courage to conquer, but the courage to embrace. Picture a river. One current pulls left, another right. If you fight to eliminate one current, you end up damming the river altogether. But if you allow them to merge, the flow strengthens, deepens, and carries you forward with power. That's what happens when you unite your inner opposites. The energy you once wasted on internal conflict becomes creative force. This reconciliation doesn't mean indulging every destructive impulse. It means hearing its message and redirecting its energy. For example, anger when integrated becomes boundaries and justice. Fear when integrated becomes caution and wisdom. Laziness when integrated becomes rest and restoration. Each shadow has a gift hidden inside it, and the only way to claim that gift is by marrying it with its opposite. When this inner marriage takes place, your outer life reorganizes to reflect it. Relationships shift because you no longer project your denied qualities onto others. Choices become clearer because you're not torn between extremes. You walk with a new kind of groundedness, no longer chasing one half of yourself while running from the other. You are at home in your own being. Integration is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. The parts of you that once waged war can now sit at the same table, not as enemies but as partners. And when that marriage happens inside, the world outside begins to mirror it. Doors open, conflicts ease, and life flows in rhythm with your wholeness. Power is not measured by how loudly you can command others, but by how honestly you can command yourself. Too often, people believe power is control of money, status, or other people's choices. But stripped bare, real power is about responsibility. The moment you refuse to own your inner struggles, you begin to project them onto others. And projection is the counterfeit of power. It blames, manipulates, accuses, and distorts. It looks strong on the outside, but inside it is weakness disguised. Think about the last time someone's anger lashed at you, not because of what you did, but because of their own unresolved frustration. That wasn't about you, it was their projection. Their inner storm found you as a screen to throw lightning on. This is what happens when power is divorced from conscience. It becomes theater, not leadership. Responsibility, however, rewrites the story. It asks, what is mine to own? Instead of blaming others for your insecurities, you face the voice inside that whispers, I'm not enough. Instead of accusing the world of holding you back, you acknowledge the fear that stops you from moving forward. By taking responsibility for your inner dramas, you remove the hooks that drag others into your shadows. You stop outsourcing your chaos and start transforming it into clarity. This shift is more radical than it seems. Because the unconscious loves projection, it's easier to blame your partner for being cold than to face your own difficulty with intimacy. It's easier to call your colleague arrogant than to admit your own hunger for recognition. But every time you project, you give away power. You make yourself a victim of the very qualities you refuse to face within. When you reverse that habit, when you claim your inner dramas as yours to work through, your influence deepens. People begin to trust you not because you're flawless, but because you're real. You radiate integrity, the quiet authority that doesn't need to shout, manipulate, or dominate. That kind of influence can move mountains, not because it forces others, but because it awakens them. True power is moral by necessity, because it grows from the soil of self-honesty. Without that, what looks like power rots into tyranny, whether in families, workplaces, or nations. History is full of leaders who projected their wounds onto the world, creating destruction on a grand scale. But history also honors those who face their own shadows, and from that responsibility, led with compassion and strength. Every time you take responsibility for what stirs inside, you reclaim energy that projection would have wasted. That energy becomes creativity, courage, and vision. It builds influence that doesn't just control, it transforms. Because in the end, power without conscience collapses. But power rooted in responsibility endures, reshaping not only your life, but the lives of everyone you touch. Most people chase self-improvement like polishing a mask, making the surface shinier while the hidden depths remain untouched. But individuation is not about polishing the mask. It is not about looking better, fitting in better, or performing better. It is initiation, an alchemical process that takes the raw material of your life, especially the failures and humiliations, and forges them into a sovereign identity. Individuation is the fire that burns away illusion so the true self can emerge. Think of every failure you've endured, every heartbreak, every rejection, every collapse. To the untrained eye, these are obstacles. To the one on the path of individuation, they are rites of passage. Just as ancient initiates were led into the dark cave, the desert, or the wilderness, stripped of comfort so they might meet their deeper self, your daily struggles are your initiation chambers. They test you not to destroy you, but to reveal you. Alchemy teaches us that base metals must be subjected to heat, pressure, and dissolution before they can become gold. The same is true for the human soul. Comfort doesn't transform you, discomfort does. Failure, far from being an indictment, is the crucible that reshapes you. Each time you stumble, you are invited to shed another layer of false identity. The one who had to be perfect, the one who had to be liked, the one who had to fit a mold. Individuation means you stop living as the mask and begin living as the essence. This path is not glamorous. It does not flatter the ego. It often feels lonely, because initiation always separates you from the crowd. While others run from their failures, you are called to face yours, study them, even thank them. While others polish their masks, you are dissolving yours in the fire. This is not about becoming better. It is about becoming whole, an identity that cannot be bought, borrowed, or faked, because it has been earned through lived initiation. What emerges from this alchemy is sovereignty. Not sovereignty as dominance, but as self-possession. You no longer move through life as a puppet of expectation or fear. You know your scars, but you also know the strength that grew through them. You know your failures, but you also know the wisdom they gave you. You become unshakable not because you never fall, but because every fall has initiated you into deeper truth. Your life, right now, is already the initiation. You don't need a secret ritual or a distant guru. You need to recognize the fire you are already standing in and claim its purpose. The arguments, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, they are not punishments. They are thresholds. And the one who walks through them consciously will come out not as a polished mask, but as gold forged in the alchemy of individuation.